guys, welcome to today's video. So I just want to let you know that this is future Annie. This video was actually filmed yesterday, except I lost the entire intro. So I went to upload the footage last night to edit and I was like, why does it just start in the middle of my makeup with no hello and no explanation of like what I'm doing or what this video is about? So I have no idea what happened, but I lost like the first 20 minutes of the video. But the lighting is a little bit different. It's like raining right now and gloomy. Yesterday it was super sunny and obviously like my hair is different and I'm wearing sweatpants and you're gonna know it's like two separate sets of footage, so I just want to let you know why. So yeah, I just wanted to hop back on here and refilm this for you today. I hope you guys had an amazing holiday season. I know the last like month of the year is always a mix of like relaxing because you guys be with your friends and family, but also super stressful because the holidays bring so many social engagements. You're wrapping up all your work for the year. You have a lot of parties, you have gifts. So I hope that you guys all had a chance to enjoy yourselves a little bit and are re-energized and ready for an amazing year ahead. I know I am. I'm really excited about a lot of stuff in the pipeline and just things that are happening in 2019 that I can't wait to share with you. So one of the most exciting things that happened at the end of the year that I did miss sharing with you here on my channel because I was not filming was the launch of my new eyeshadow palette. Let me show you a wrapped nice version and then I'll show you my like super used and abused version and kind of go through like how I created it and the names and what it means to me. This is the one and it launched on my website. It will be launching in Sephora later this month or early next month, but it's on lawlessbeauty.com currently. It comes with this plastic sleeve that you slide off and then the palette just comes out and there are 18 shades. I just kind of want to run you through each shade in the palette quickly and then you can kind of see them in action when I put them on my eyes in the tutorial. So this first shade here is called First Base, and this is what I use to kind of like blank out my eyelid. We often have discoloration and veins, and I find that going in with a creamy white shade not only helps give a really blank canvas for all the other shadows to pop on top of, but it also makes them blend a lot easier because you've got a powder setting down any concealer or eyeshadow base that you have on your lid so that it's not tacky anymore and the shadows don't stick to it and then make it harder to blend. So I always go in with a shade like this when I'm first starting my eyeshadow. This next shade here is called Casual, and I called it Casual because it's not a super in-your-face blinding metallic reflect. It's just a really satin shadow, so that's what I use on my brow bone and my inner tear duct on days where I don't want to have like a super foiled, you know, inner corner or like a really bam in your face highlight. I just want something that kind of catches the light and makes the skin look glossy and brings light into that area. And then this next shade is called Fling, and this is a true gold. I just wanted a true gold that didn't lean too brassy, too antique, or too dark and had enough white in it to just make it a straight up gold. This next shade is called Butterflies, and I love this. The reason I called it Butterflies is because yellow is such a happy color, and I feel like in a relationship when you're in that really happy, like, you know, excited phase, you have butterflies. But I find that yellow is a shadow that a lot of people don't gravitate towards or think to put on their eyes. But if you just run it through your crease, it's very subtle, but it peeks through other shadows you put on top and just really warms up the eye and gives a really inviting look. So I love this shade in my crease. This next one here is called Complicated, and it is a complicated shade because it's kind of ugly. It's like that mustardy brown that you wouldn't like say is so beautiful on its own, but on the eyes it is so incredibly flattering on every skin tone, every eye color, and it's probably the shade in the palette I use the most on a daily basis when I'm just going for like a neutral brown look. I love this all over the lid by itself too. Those camel tones are just really, really beautiful and flattering on everybody, and I highly recommend having something like this in your collection. This next shade here is called Play Cool because it's just a cool tone brown. I always love having a warm tone dark brown and a cool tone dark brown in a palette just because I never know if I'm gonna be doing a cool tone or a warm tone look, but I do always need that like outer V definition. So going in with a brown, whether it's cool or warm tone, just really gives me that definition that I need. So I love having a cool tone brown. This next row is super warm. This first shade here is called Crushing, and this is like a peachy champagne shade, and I love going in with these shades all over my lid. I just find them to be so flattering and beautiful, and I always need it in my collection. And I always need a shade like this when I'm doing a smoky eye or a halo eye, just to bring light back into the eyes and not have it be too heavy on the lid. I like to brighten it up and really bring light into that inner portion of the lid. So this is the shade I typically go for when I'm doing that type of look. This next shade here is called Everything, and I called it Everything because it's my go-to transition shade. I use it for everything. I use it to blur out any shadow that I've gone in too heavy with. I use it to blend shadow in the crease. Right after I put First Base all over the lid, I go in with this in the crease just to run it through. It's just barely noticeable, and especially on my skin tone, it doesn't really show up, but it does give all the other shadows something to blend seamlessly into, so there's that nice gradient. If you just go in straight with like a dark brown or a deep, you know, red-based orange, without going in with a shade like this in the crease, it's hard to blend that out because it doesn't have anything to blend into. So everything really does work for everything. This next shade here is called Next Level because it's just a little bit darker than everything, so it's the next level up. It's that yellow-based orange. It's super beautiful if you just want to deepen up your transition, or if you have a deeper skin tone and you need a deeper shade of transition than everything. I love this to also buff out any harsh edges in warm tones if I'm doing something like this or this in the crease, and I really just need to buff out any harsh lines. This next shade here is called Feels because it's that like red-based fiery orange, and I feel like it's just like that fiery, gives you all the feels. This shade here is called Obsessed because I am truly obsessed with it. It's this super foiled copper shade. I feel like you need to just see this swatch to understand how foiled it really is. And when I first got into eyeshadows, these were the types of shades that I went for like hard. When I was like 14, 15, Copper Ring from MAC, like all of those type of like super coppery shades, I would just have that like all over my lid, and I was the happiest girl ever. Like I thought that that was everything. So I still have like a major affinity for those coppery, super metallic shades, so I am obsessed with it. This shade here is called Steady because it's not too dark, it's not as like warm as a deep fudgy brown, but it's also not super light, so it's just that steady mid-tone go-to brown that you could use on a daily basis that a lot of people gravitate towards, and I think it looks good on everybody. You always just need like a mid-tone brown. This next row is kind of my pop of color row. So you guys know when I go for a pop of color, like I'm not the person that's gonna grab like neon eyeshadow or like a blue, but I do like to go in with purples and pinks and jewel tones, and I find on brown eyes, like these burgundy, cranberry, and purple based tones are so, so beautiful. So this first shade here is called Cutie, and this is like a super foiled kind of pink champagne shade, and I love to go in with this all over the lid. It has that really beautiful ethereal look, and it's just so stunning. It just makes the lids look so glossy. I love this both on its own and with other shadows. This shade here is called Baby, and this is like that baby pink. I think that pink is such a wearable pop of color on the eyes, and I think a lot of people are scared because you think you might like look like you got punched in the eye or like you have pink eye, but it really is so, so beautiful. And this is what I use as my transition when I'm doing a look with these berries in the crease. This next shade here is called Infatuation, and this is sort of like that magenta pink, but it's got some depth to it. It's not super bright and in your face. It's got that like sort of dusty, kind of deeper berry vibe to it that I just really think is so stunning. This next shade here is called Shady, and this is sort of like that deep burgundy, but it has a flash of brown, so it's super wearable. Even though it is a purple shade, it can come off super neutral if you want it to, if you just run it in the outer V to kind of add depth, but you use a lot of other neutral tones on the eyes. It's not overtly burgundy or purple, but it definitely like works with cool tone looks and anything in the berry family. This next shade here is called DTR, which means define the relationship. A lot of you guys were asking me that on social media. Warm tone brown is like the shade that I use to help define that outer V and really like bring that definition of the eyes. So, and we've all needed a relationship defined in our lives at some point or another, so yeah. And I also go in with this anytime I feel like I need to amp my eye look up, but I don't want to go in with black and make it too heavy for daytime. This next shade here is called Plunge because when you take the plunge, that's it. It's the end. There's nothing beyond black, so I love having a black in a palette. It's absolutely essential for me to have a black in a palette. I get so bummed out when I have a great palette that I think is perfect, but it doesn't have a black, and then I have to bring a single black with me, and it's just so annoying. So I find that a black is so useful. You never know when you're gonna need it to line the eyes, add more depth, do a smoky eye, go from day to night. I just find a black everybody should have in their collection. So I definitely knew, that was like the first shade I knew I had to have in this palette. I created this the year that I got married, which was 2017. And I was traveling so much that year. I went to Italy 3 times to plan my wedding. I obviously had my honeymoon. I went to New York several times, a bunch of work trips. And throughout that time, I had a big Z palette, and I had like something like 80 single shadows in it. It was double-sided. Like I had so many shadows in there. And every time I got back from a trip, I would remove shades that I didn't touch, and add shades that I wished I had. I was really able to get a grip on what shadows I really need to have in my collection at all times, because when you travel, you're reliant on only what you bring. So it's a really good indicator of like what is most important to you. And that was how I came to this lineup of shadows, because these are the shades that I must have on me at all times. So that's the palette. I'm so excited to finally be able to share it with you guys. Without further ado, I'll just get into all the footage that I filmed yesterday with the actual tutorial. But let me know what looks you guys want to see down in the comments below, and I can definitely film some of those for you in my next videos. Okay, now that I have you kind of up close and personal, let's go ahead and do the eye look. So I'm gonna start by just putting some Seal the Deal loose translucent powder under my eyes. And this palette doesn't have a lot of fallout, but I always recommend doing this if you've done your face makeup first and you're gonna be going in with any dark shadows at all, just because there's nothing worse than ruining all of your base makeup at the end when you sweep away like some black or brown shadow and it leaves this huge smear, and it's just really hard to correct at that point. So this is just an easy safeguard, and it just sweeps away so much easier in the event that it does stick. So I'm just gonna set this sort of under my eyes, and I do have my base makeup on because I didn't want this tutorial to be, you know, 8 years long, and I really just want to be able to focus on the eyes and show you sort of how the palette works. You guys have seen me do my base so many times before, so it's pretty much the same routine I've done in other videos if you want to go check it out in a previous video. But I have my foundation, concealer, and powder on, and then I'm gonna do the rest like bronzer, highlight, contour, and blush after I finish the eyes. Now that we've sort of got that, I am going to go ahead and prep the eyes for all the shadows that I'm going to be going in with on top. So to do that, I'm going to first go in with this shade First Base. And this shade is really important to me in a palette. Having a creamy sort of neutral white shade really just helps all of the eyeshadows pop on top of a smooth and even canvas. Our eyelids often have discoloration, we have redness, we have veins, so kind of blanking them out with like a creamy white shade just really helps all the other shadows be the most true to color when you go in with them on the eyes. So I'm gonna go ahead and just lay that down all over. So now we're gonna go with our transition shade, and the transition shade is really important in any eye look because it is going to go between your brow bone and your lid, kind of in your crease, to help all the shadows that you put on your lid blend up into something and eventually fade out into the brow bone. So that transition just really bridges the gap between the shadows on your lid and your brow bone, and that way you don't have a choppy look where shadows just start and stop. They have something to sort of fade into. So this should always be just like a shade or two deeper than your skin tone. It should be barely noticeable and just sort of help kind of bridge the gap between all of the shadows blending up, but it's really not supposed to be too apparent. So this shadow here, Everything, the reason I called it that is because I do need it for everything. No matter what eye look I'm doing, I always go in with sort of a peachy shade like this in my crease that's barely noticeable, but it does make everything blend so much easier. So I'm just gonna take a big fluffy brush for that, and I'm just gonna sort of work that into the crease, and this can be sort of messy. You just kind of want to lay this down all over. And this is also going to just add another layer of powder in this area so that your shadows blend easier. Anytime you have a tacky eyelid or any sort of, you know, unset base, the shadows will stick and they'll be much harder to blend. So having some powders laid down before you go in with darker shades helps those darker shades blend a lot easier. And I like to do this with just like windshield wiper motions and then circular motions. So kind of windshield and circles, windshield and circles. And this just really helps everything blend. And as you can see, that is a very, very subtle shade. So there's not a lot of color coming from that, especially in relation to my skin tone. It's very similar to my skin tone, but it does have a profoundly helpful effect in blending your eyeshadows out. Next, I'm gonna go into this shade here, Feels. So I'm gonna take a smaller tapered brush for that shadow and be a little bit more precise than I was with that first Everything shade because it is deeper, so we want it to be a little bit more targeted in the outer V and the crease. Okay, and then I'm gonna take that fluffy brush that we used for everything in the beginning and just go over the edges to make sure that everything is blended seamlessly together. And the thing about orange eyeshadow that's interesting, I think a lot of people are scared when you see a color like, you know, this one here feels. I think it can be a little bit jarring, like putting a bright orange eyeshadow on your eyes, but it really is so, so flattering. And especially if you just run it through the crease and then you go over it with some deeper, you know, more neutral browns, that peak of orange just like kind of right behind, layered underneath those shadows that just sort of is there but not super obvious, just really adds a lot of light and brightness to the eyes, and it's so, so flattering. So don't be afraid to play with orange shades because they really are such a great way to open up the eyes and just bring so much depth and warmth into that area that is so inviting and youthful. Okay, next I'm gonna deepen up a little bit more, and I'm gonna go in with this shade here, Steady. And Steady is just a really great brown that is warm, but it's just sort of that mid-tone brown that is gonna add depth and dimension to the eyes, but it's not too dark or too smoky like a deep chocolatey brown, but it's definitely there, and it definitely does help add depth without going overboard for daytime. Taking that on an even smaller brush, and I'm gonna focus that even more precisely in the outer V. Okay, and then I'm gonna take that brush that I went in with Feels and just go over the edges to buff out any harsh lines. Okay, so now you can see we've got this all matte crease. We've layered a few warm shades, so we've definitely started building dimension. And before I kind of go in and deepen up the entire outer V, I'm gonna do my shadows on the lid, and I'm gonna go in with some metallics for this. So I want this look to be sort of like a bronzy, coppery, golden, smoky eye, so, but like subtle, sort of like a soft smoke. So I think what I'm gonna do is first go in with this shade Obsessed. And I call this Obsessed because I really am obsessed with this. It is like one of my favorite shades in the entire palette. It's just this absolutely stunning copper shadow that I just, the reflect on it, it just like really does something to me. So I like to go in with this with my finger. I find that I get the best color payoff with pretty much any metallic by going with my finger, because a brush can oftentimes not pick shimmers up as well as your finger can and press them into the lid. So you're gonna get the most maximum payoff going in with your finger. And you can also go ahead and wet your finger or brush to get even more payoff. I'm not gonna do that today, but I do that a lot, and that's another great way to really make it look foiled and metallic. I'm just gonna press this all over my lid. Kind of stopping right before that outer V so I don't completely cover up that depth that we built. Okay, so now we've got that kind of laid down all over the lid, and I'm gonna go in with this shade Crushing right here, which is just sort of like a really beautiful peachy champagne shimmer. And I'm gonna go over that just to sort of brighten it up and lighten it up. And also I'm gonna concentrate it on the inner corner to really bring light into the eye area there. I always love highlighting my inner tear duct with a really super like bright, either champagne or gold shimmer that just really helps bring light and open the eyes up. So I'm gonna first put that in the inner tear duct. And then I'm gonna layer it over Obsessed. And see how that just like kind of brightens it up and gives this like really cool metallic look, but it's sort of like mixing metals a little bit, so it's just like really bronzy and really, really beautiful. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and build up even more depth on the outer V with some deeper brown tones to really add that definition to the eyes. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in with DTR. So I'm gonna take a little bit of that on a smaller brush to keep it super targeted where I want it to be. And I'm just going to lightly put that, sort of starting at the lash line and blending it up into the outer V. And I'm keeping this low. I don't want this to become too dramatic, too fast. So I like to just keep it low And see, those transition shades in the crease really give it something to blend into so that you're not just going in with a dark brown shadow that's like stamped on your eye and now you're like, great, it just looks like I, you know, placed it there, but I have nothing to blend it out with. So this just sort of bridges that gap and helps all the shadows blend seamlessly up into the brow bone and sort of fade into the skin and then disappear. And then we're gonna do that on the other eye. Okay, so now that we've got that darker DTR shade, I always like to go back over everything. At every stage, I like to go back and make sure that I'm just blending out the edges and that there's no harsh lines. So I'm actually gonna mix Feels, this shade right here, with Next Level, which is sort of like a lighter, sunnier orange that has a little bit more like yellow to it, just to help everything blend out on the edges. And you don't ever wanna blend like over the shadow you just did because you don't wanna like completely remove the intensity. It's just those edges that kind of go up into the crease. You always just want to make sure that the gradient is really seamless. So just go over that very lightly, and that just sort of helps blend everything out. And if you ever do mess up your eyeshadow and you're like, shoot, how do I blend this out? The best way is to go in with some lighter shades on the brush, and those will really help diffuse any dark shadows that you do need help blending. So as you can see, there's really not a lot of fallout on that powder, which is great. So we'll go ahead and do our liner on the upper lash line, and then we'll go ahead and do the lower lash line and smoke those out with shadows, and I'll show you guys kind of how to make that join up with the top so that the look is kind of like this really beautiful, bronzy, smoky eye. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and go in with this Tarteist double take eyeliner. I really like the felt tip of this, and I'm just gonna do like a thin black line on the upper lash line, and then we'll go ahead and smoke it out with some shadow. Okay, so I'm not gonna do a wing today because I really want this to be like a soft smoke and not super like dramatic with a sharp wing. I really want it to be like a really golden, bronzy sort of like summery vibe. So I'm gonna keep that sort of just a thin line on the upper lash line, nothing too crazy. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take an eyeliner brush, and I'm gonna use this Bobbi Brown eyeliner brush. I've had this forever. I really like the shape of this brush. I just think it's got a really great taper to it, and it really helps blend dark shadows on that lash line and just sort of like diffuse out any liner look that you're doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in with the black in the palette, and this is called Plunge. This shadow was really difficult to formulate because when you're doing clean ingredients, you're not using carbon black, you're not using a lot of the really like heavy toxic sort of colorants, and a lot of the really black things on the market, mascaras, eyeliners, eyeshadows use ingredients that I don't use in my line. And then I also really didn't want a lot of fallout. One thing that drives me crazy is when a black is super crumbly and it just falls everywhere, and it's really difficult to work with and messy because I love dark smoky eyes, as you guys know, and black is such a staple in my daily routine. So it really drives me nuts when I'm constantly worrying about the fallout and constantly messing up my face makeup and it's just messy and getting everywhere. So trying to make a black really black, but also without a lot of fallout was tough, but eventually I kind of landed on my perfect formula, and I'm so obsessed with this shade. So I'm gonna take this brush and just take a little bit of Plunge, and I'm just going to wiggle that sort of like lightly across that liquid liner, focusing it sort of on the outer V and dragging it up a slight bit, and then keeping it thinner as we go in. But this just really helps kind of give that smokier, sultrier look to the eyeliner versus like being too perfect. So it just kind of like smokes it up. And to me, it also makes it more casual. I'm not a huge fan of having like a super defined line there. I really like it when it looks sort of like lived in makeup. I've always done this. I just really like the look of it. And I like to do this with dark brown as well. That's another really great shadow to use, DTR, if you don't like using black or you feel like it's a little bit too dramatic for you. I know a lot of people are scared of using black, or they just don't like black on them. If you have smaller eyes, you might not want to use black because it can close your eyes up. And I'm just a smoky eye kind of girl. So Not everybody has the same preference, and that's okay. Sometimes I get those comments on Instagram like, do you ever do anything other than a smoky eye? And I'm like, no. Okay. So now that that's done, it's time to wipe away the fallout. So to do this, I like to sort of take a little bit more powder and just get a little bit on a small brush like this. This is like one of my favorite brushes. It's by Makeup Forever. It's the 144. I find this shape, I use this mostly for brightening powder, and at the end of my makeup, if I feel like I just need a little brightening, I just really precisely place it in here, and I just feel like it's so helpful. So I'm just gonna sweep this away. And see how easily all that shadow just falls away? And so if you didn't have that powder there, it would just be a lot messier, and it may actually drag, and then you've got to go like fix your face makeup, and it's really hard to remove your face makeup and then reapply it and not have it look all cakey and weird. So I am a big fan of just using a powder shield. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and do the lower lash line, and I'm going to go in with DTR right here, and I'm gonna use this Sigma. Well, I've used it so much it's actually, the name's worn off, but I will link it below. But any brush this shape, every brand makes this brush, is really my favorite for going in with a deeper shade and stamping it on the lower lash line and using that sort of as liner. And then I go in with the shadows I used on the crease and sort of the way that I blended it up into the brow bone. I do that sort of on the lower lash line to blend all of the liner out. So this brush is really essential for me, and I really recommend having this in your collection. It's just a vital brush for me, and I use it every day. So I'm gonna take DTR on that, and I'm just gonna stamp that along my lower lash line. Okay, and then to smoke that out, I'm gonna take this tiny little brush. What is this? It's by Wayne Goss, and it's a number 5 brush. It's just like a little pencil brush. And I'm gonna go in with Steady. So I'm basically gonna work in reverse from dark to light with the same shadows I did on my upper lid. So the way that we sort of started here and then did this and then did this and then did this, I started with this, and then I'm gonna start blending it out with this, then this, then this. And so I feel like that's just a really easy way to sort of diffuse it. And that way you're not going in last with the darkest shadow on the lower lash line. I sort of like it to be a little bit less severe on the lower lash line, so that's the way that I like to do that. And then I'm gonna go in with Feels. And then I'm gonna take a fluffier brush. I'm gonna go ahead and use sort of this size, and I'm gonna go in with Next Level, which is sort of that yellow spaced orange and everything mixed. And I'm gonna kind of go over everything. And I even sometimes like to just sort of like bring it out here and then go over the crease as well, just to join everything up and sort of make it all look uniform, like it belongs together. You don't ever want to like not have your shadow meet up out here, because then you can kind of just see the disjointment between your lower lash line and your upper, and you kind of just want it all to look like this nice halo around the eye. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and line my upper and lower waterline, and to do that, I'm not gonna use a black, I'm actually gonna use brown today, and I'm using the Urban Decay 24/7. I sharpened it, so like the name stops there, but I'll link it below. This is in the shade Whiskey, and this is like one of my favorite browns of all time. It's just a really nice, warm, chocolatey brown, and I feel like it's a really great color to use when you're doing bronzy tones instead of using a black if you don't want it to be as severe. We're going for more of a soft smoke today, so I feel like it just works really, really well with the brown and copper and champagne tones. So I'm gonna go ahead and line my upper waterline. I'm sorry in advance for how disgusting this looks. And then I'm gonna do my lower waterline. So as you guys can see, it's subtle, but it really does help make your eyes pop, and it really makes your lashes look thicker along the upper and lower waterline. So I love doing that for most eye looks. I line my waterline most days, actually. And then we're gonna go ahead and curl our lashes. I'm not gonna go in with falsies today, so I'm just gonna do mascara on my natural lashes, and I'm gonna use the Marc Jacobs Velvet Noir Major Volume Mascara. I still haven't found a clean mascara that I like. I'm definitely working on one, and I'm not there yet. I have to love it in order for me to actually create it. So I've been through a lot of different variations, and I still haven't found anything that's quite right in terms of both the blackness and the way that it volumizes the lashes and the way that it stays on. But I'm getting very close. In the meantime though, I do recommend this one. It is cruelty free. It's not natural, but it definitely is a great mascara, and the effect is really beautiful on the lashes. Okay, and while that dries before we do our lower lash line mascara, I wanna go ahead and highlight the brow bone. And to do that, I'm gonna use this shade here, Casual. And this is not as highly reflective as some of these other metallics. It's more of a satin, and why I love this is I find that it just catches the light really beautifully on the brow bone without being like a straight up highlight right here that's very obvious. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do that with a tiny little brush like this. You can use any sort of little brush that can just kind of like get up in there. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of that and just put that on my brow bone. And the reason I like to do this before I do my brows is I find that if I do it after, I kind of mess up my brow pencil. But see how that just really adds that light to the brow bone, but it's not like this overly reflective like bam, but you can see the difference. It just really opens up that area. And it's also a great way to clean up any eyeshadow that you may have taken up too far by accident. Okay, and now I'm also gonna take that onto the inner corner. Okay, so that's really the eyes done. I'm just gonna go ahead and put mascara on my lower lash line, finish up my contour, bronzer, blush, and highlight, and my brows, and then I'll be back with the completed look. Okay guys, so this is the completed look. I went ahead and used Golden Translucent as my bronzer, and I did my blush, highlight, contour, brows, and lips. I have Cameron on my lips. I will link everything that I used down below. I just didn't want to do the entire face because I really wanted to focus on the eyes for this look, and you guys have seen me do my face makeup so many times before. But if you do prefer longer, more like detailed full face tutorials, let me know and I can incorporate every step if that's really what you want to see. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited to have been able to film my very first tutorial using the One. I have been working on this and using this for such a long time, so to be able to use it on camera and actually show you in action is just so exciting for me. I wanted to really start this first tutorial with like my quintessential go-to shadows, which is obviously like this bronzy, coppery, warm, smoky eye. But I definitely want to incorporate more tutorials using some of the more unique shades that maybe you guys aren't used to using, like this camel sort of area with the yellow, the cool tone brown, and one of my favorite shades that I think is so flattering on everybody, but it is complicated, which is its name, because it looks kind of ugly, like it's a mustardy brown, but to me it's like one of my most used shadows on a daily basis. And I obviously have to play with these berries. You guys know when I go for a pop of color, this is kind of the color family that I go to. I'm not like the person that will grab a blue or a green. I will go for these like berry, jewel tone, cranberry tones for the eyes, and I think that they're super flattering for brown eyes. So yeah, I'm just so excited. This palette is everything that I wanted it to be and more, and thank you so much for being so excited to see tutorials. Let me know what you guys want to see. If you do have the palette and there's certain shades that you want to get more use out of but you don't know how to use them, let me know and I can demonstrate different ways that I wear them. I want to do some unique combinations too. I have a friend that just told me her favorite pairing is this shade here, Cutie, with Complicated, which I wouldn't have thought to do, so I definitely want to like show you guys how to do some unexpected color combinations that can be really flattering. So I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are. Please let me know what you want to see down below now that I'm back filming. I missed you guys so much, and thank you for being patient with me while my schedule was a little bit crazy throughout the holidays and travel. And I will see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye!